My brothers and sisters, may the Lord be with you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to John. Jesus went across the Sea of Galilee. A large crowd followed him because they saw the signs he was performing on the sick. Jesus went up on the mountain, and there he sat down with his disciples. The Jewish feast of Passover was near. When Jesus raised his eyes and saw that a large crowd was coming to him, he said to Philip, "Where can we buy enough food for them to eat?" He said this to test him, because he himself knew what he was going to do. Philip answered him, 200 days' wages worth of food would not be enough for each of them to have a little. One of his disciples, Andrew, the brother of Simon Peter, said to him, "There is a boy here who has 5 barley loaves and 2 fish, but what good are these for so many?" Jesus said, "Have the people recline." Now there was a great deal of grass in that place. So the men reclined, about 5,000 in number. And then Jesus took the loaves and gave thanks and distributed them to those who were reclining, and also as much of the fish as they wanted. When they'd had their fill, he said to his disciples, "Gather the fragments left over, so that nothing will be wasted." So they collected them, and they filled 12 wicker baskets with fragments from the 5 barley loaves that had been more than they could eat. When the people saw the sign he had done, they said, "This is truly the prophet, the one who is to come into the world." Since Jesus knew that they were going to come and carry him off to make him king, he withdrew again to the mountain alone. The Gospel of the Lord. The Acts of the Apostles reading for this morning introduces us to Gamaliel, one of the Pharisees in the Sanhedrin, and according to the annals of the time, he was indeed, as the Acts of the Apostles suggested, a teacher of the law, was highly respected by all the people, and so he would therefore be somebody that a lot of people would pay attention to. And Gamaliel very, very wisely suggests to them that if they try to persecute or do away with this message of Jesus and these disciples, and it's of God's dealings and work, there's no way that they can do that. And he proceeds to give them a listing of many of those kind of itinerant preachers that show themselves prior, all of which at one point or another finally went out of favor and became unpopular, and those who followed after them walked away. Gamaliel suggested, be patient and wait and see. If this is God's work, we can't do anything to stop it. If it's man's work, it will end itself. And of course, we know what happened. It's God's work. It didn't stop. And we see an example of what God was able to do in the person of Jesus as we listen to the gospel today from John. We're at the beginning of chapter 6. And this is kind of the introduction, if you will, to Jesus' lengthy monologue about the bread of life, and that a person must eat not just the bread alone, as the antiphon suggested to us, but that every word of God that comes forth from the mouth of God is as important as the bread that we eat. And so he feeds them, first of all, physically. And they are, of course, kind of overpowered by this. And the initial reaction, of course, is that let's make him king. This is a very good deal. And obviously it ends up happening that many of these people, in their level of faith and belief and conviction of Jesus, only saw the physical thing. John goes so far as to tell us a little bit later on in this chapter that as Jesus started explaining the fact that you must eat my flesh and drink my blood to have life, and people found the teaching so difficult to comprehend or accept, that many walked away. It was just too much for them to bear. And Jesus is quick to suggest back again, the only reason you came back to listen to me is because I fed you before, and you're looking for that kind of food again. And here I'm offering you the type of food that's far more important, far more eternal. For us as Christians, fortunately, we understand the ramifications of what Jesus taught, and we realize in faith what we receive as such a precious gift, both in our celebration of Eucharist and in our hearing the Word of God. And so as we again come to this table, let's be mindful of the gift that God gives us over and over again, each day of our lives.